Welcome in everyone to another Baldur's Gate 3 video. I am Senpai Zaya. Thank you so much for being here today. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be ranking all of the wizard spells, including the cantrips, in Baldur's Gate 3. So that way you have a better idea of what spells you should be picking and going for. And as a quick disclaimer, remember this is just my opinion. So your opinions can differ. And if you have different opinions, please leave them in the comments down below. But without further ado, let's get into this tier list. All right, so we have a lot of spells to cover, so let's jump right into it. The first spell cantrip is going to be Acid Splash, and Acid Splash is decent, but there's honestly just better damaging cantrips out there. It's not the worst, but it's like its uses aren't really too good, so I'm gonna go with C tier. Like I said, it's not the worst, but honestly you're better off picking like another cantrip, especially when it comes to like damaging cantrips. So the next one is going to be Blade Ward, and I actually like Blade Ward maybe more than the majority of people out there. And the reason why I like Blade Ward so much is because especially in the early levels, sometimes you can't get in range to like cast a spell or really like make an attack or do anything on your turn, and Blade Ward is a nice way to just do something on your turn and get like a little bit of a benefit. So I'd say it's better than Acid Splash, but it's still not like absolutely amazing or like game breaking or anything like that. So I'm gonna go with like B. It's like a low B. Like if there's like a C plus or like a B minus, that's probably where I'd put Blade Ward. Dancing Lights can have its uses, but the problem is with Dancing Lights is that there's a lot of way to gain like vision through light in this game, or just to have dark vision. So it's not like the most useful thing ever, you know, and especially in those early levels when you don't have as many cantrips to choose from, Dancing Lights becomes less and less valuable. And then as you get farther on in the game, like you have weapons that can produce light, you have armor, you have equipment, you have dark vision, like you have all these different things. So Dancing Lights isn't bad by any means, but it's not really that useful. Now Firebolt I am going to say is going to be like the default cantrip for like damaging cantrip for almost every class minus like Warlock, and we're just doing Wizard right now. But for like a Wizard specifically, Firebolt is going to be like an S tier cantrip for you, because that's going to be like your default damaging cantrip that you do go to. And then Friends is like another insane cantrip, and gaining that advantage on like charisma checks as a cantrip just like for free is still really good. So I'm still gonna put it in A, because you still can take it and make use out of it, and maybe you do have a little bit higher charisma. Or if you still want to use like your main character as a wizard but still want them to be like the face of the party and have the interactions, then Friends is going to help with like having like a lower charisma score, because of the fact that you do gain that advantage. Light I actually like a lot better than Dancing Lights, which is weird because in D&D 5e I actually prefer it the other way around. But the thing about Light is it does last until long rest, and you can just enchant like your weapon, your shield, your bow, whatever with it, and it does provide you like that extra just like light source, which is really nice. And there's a couple things that synergize with like having light on it, so that's also really nice. And personally, for making videos, sometimes casting light makes it easier to see, because Baldur's Gate 3 does have some very dark parts in it. So for those reasons, I'm going to put light in like B tier, because I still think it's good, and there's still like some niche uses to it because of the fact that so many people have dark vision and stuff like that. But Light is just like a pretty solid cantrip. Like you can't go wrong with it. And there is the in Act 2 Light, before you get like the pixie or another way to fend off the darkness, Light comes in clutch there. So Mage Hand is a solid cantrip in my opinion. It does have like a decent amount of utility. Like there's some, like the more creative you are, the better Mage Hand gets. That's like the best way I would put it. So for like a non-creative player, Mage Hand you're not really going to get too much use out of, but the more creative you are, then the better it gets. So like this could easily go from like a C tier cantrip where you just end up not using it ever, all the way up to an A, depending on how like creative you are. So for that reason, I'm going to put it in high B tier, because of the fact that like Mage Hand really is dependent on how creative you are as a player to make use of it. Minor Illusion I feel like works better in D&D 5e than it does in Baldur's Gate, and it's not that it's bad, it's just that the way that like a video game mechanic works as compared to like like tabletop, there's going to be some differences, right? So minor illusion, I think ultimately I would put it in like C tier. I've gotten some use out of it, especially for specific builds, but it's not like the best thing ever. Poison spray is kind of like acid splash. Like most of the time you just don't use it, and it has pretty short range too, so it's just not like a damaging cantrip that you really want to pick up unless you are looking to do like a poison build or something like that. So for that reason, it's going to go in C tier. Ray of Frost I'm going to put in A tier, and the reason why I like Ray of Frost so much is because it's like your second best option when it comes to damaging cantrips, like range damaging cantrips for a wizard, but you trade off a little bit of damage for like utility, and that's always really nice. Like having utility is always really nice to have. And there is a specific build in Baldur's Gate 3 that you can do, especially for a wizard, that is like a frost build. And I actually have a video up on my channel, so if you want to check that out, there'll be a little card up there where you can check that out. But this one's really nice to have for that, because that frost build really does make Ray of Frost so much better than Firebolt in that specific build and output a lot more damage. So for that reason, it's going in A tier. And then Shocking Grasp. I actually am huge on Shocking Grasp for my wizards, and the reason why, we'll move it like this, but the reason why I like Shocking Grasp so much is because sometimes enemies do just run up on you, and Shocking Grasp is an easy way to do damage in melee range while still being like a wizard, right? And so Shocking Grasp does allow you to have an option for when you do get ran up on, or if an enemy like teleports you, like Misty Steps or whatever. Plus also with the way that like Warcaster, like getting like that Shocking Grasp reaction for Warcaster is another nice benefit, and does play to the overall ranking of Shocking Grasp. True Strike is trash, just don't use it. It's so bad. Necrotic Touch is like decent. It's not like the best, and it has a little bit of utility in it. So if you're like a necromancer wizard and you want to like have like a thematic like necromancy spell to use, then you can go Necrotic Touch, and like it, you know, it can be like a little bit helpful. So I'll put it in like low B tier, because like it's not the worst damaging cantrip for wizards, but it's also not the best. Burning Hands is pretty solid. I'm going to put it in high B tier. Burning Hands early game is pretty solid. Like you can get out a lot of damage, and it's like a nice like just like cone AoE damaging option for those early levels, and it can do a lot for you. And then we're gonna go Charm Person. Charm Person's interesting because if you took Friends, you don't need Charm Person really at all. Like it's just kind of like, it's redundant, right? Like because Friends exists as a cantrip, why would you spend a level 1 spell slot on Charm Person? And there's like some minor ways that you can get it to work and have it be a little bit better, or like in combat and stuff, but still it's just not worth it. Chromatic Orb is going to be an S tier. Level 1 spell for me. I think that like Chromatic Orb is just like the default level 1 damaging spell to go for most spell casting classes, especially because of the utility that it brings. Like someone can cast Shape Water before you get into create water before you get into combat, totally mess up that sentence, and then you can throw a lightning Chromatic Orb, and then it's going to do double damage, right? Like there's so many options. Like you can get like the frost, the frozen surfaces with it. You can ignite like grease on the ground. Like it has so many different options for it, and it just makes it like a very, very solid spell. Disguise Self. Now Disguise Self is something that I use a lot in D&D 5e, but I end up never really using it in Baldur's Gate. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have its uses, because there are some uses. Like for example, if you really want to use a Githyanki weapon, but you didn't pick Githyanki as your starting race, then you can use Disguise Self and then get those benefits, right? So I think that it's like pretty solid, and it does have its uses, but again, like it's pretty niche. So I'm going to put it in B tier. B tier is kind of like the solid tier, and then A tier for me would be like pretty great. S tier is like broken, like must pick up. C tier is kind of like man. D tier is trash. Expeditious Retreat. Now Expeditious Retreat is something that I admittedly have not used too much in Baldur's Gate. That's not to say that it's bad, because it does have its uses. Like especially in the early game, being able to dash as a bonus action for like a squishy wizard is going to help you survive a lot, and being able to like kite out those enemies, especially if you're combining this with like Ray of Frost and like an enemy's trying to chase you down, you can really just make sure that they never get to you. So for that reason, I think Expeditious Retreat is going to go in like it's somewhere between like C plus and B minus, so I'll just put it over here in like B tier, because it's not bad by any means. There are better spells, but I feel like if you, especially for like honor mode and like the game modes that are going to be harder and the ones that you really want to focus on surviving in instead of just trying to like brute force everything, this is going to be a really good spell for you. False life is like solid, but it's not like the best thing ever. And it's like a lot of the times it's like I don't really want to use a spell slot on false life. You know what I mean? Like a 7 temporary hit points, and you can scale it up, so it's not terrible by any means. It'd probably be like a C plus, honestly, but it's just not a spell that like I find myself or many people like picking or using a lot. Featherfall, I'm going to put in A tier. It's like S tier exploration, but it's like A tier overall. And the reason why is because it's just a nice spell to have in your back pocket. Like it doesn't cost a spell slot because it's a ritual spell, and it for exploration, it can just allow you to completely negate fall damage and get to places that otherwise you might have to walk all the way around to get to, everything like that. So overall, Featherfall is just really solid. And honestly, no, I'm going to put it in S tier for the fact that my S tier is like a must pick up, because Featherfall is a spell that you should have in your back pocket, because more often than not, you are going to come across a situation where you're going to need Featherfall, especially in the early game, especially before everyone has like Misty Step and Dimension Door and everything like that. Find Familiar is solid. I'm just going to put it in B tier. In this game, I feel like Find Familiar is good. For a wizard specifically, it does have its advantages, but it's not as good as like for like a warlock with like Pact of the Chain, right? So I think Find Familiar is like a really cool spell, and it does have like some utility. It just gives you another extra summon and another extra body out there that can provide a little bit of utility or damage, so not bad. Fog Cloud I haven't really used too much. I just don't find a lot of cases where it's like useful for me. I think that it still has its use cases, obviously, but it's not like the best. Grease, this isn't going to be in order right now, but Grease I'm going to put in B tier, and the reason why is because at first like I wasn't too high on Grease, but seeing all the different ways that you can actually utilize Grease becomes really, really intriguing, especially in the harder difficulties, because as you get into like honor mode and everything, one of the things that you want to combine is you want to combine damage and CC, because of the fact that like you only have one life. So it's like if you die, right? So while you can brute force and lose a couple of companions in like the regular game modes and then just like revive them and be fine, you want to prevent enemies doing damage to you. So like having Grease, being able to like place that down and potentially knock a couple enemies prone and then throw in like a fire chromatic orb in there to do a bunch of damage and burning and everything like that, you get damage, but then you also get CC. So not only are you making it harder to kill you, but you're also getting off good damage too. So that's why I really like Grease. It does have a lot more utility than I initially gave it credit for. Ice Knife is pretty good. I like Ice Knife. I wouldn't say that it's like exactly A tier, but Ice Knife is actually like really solid, especially if you're going to go with the Frost build that I was talking about before. But it's just like another good damaging level 1 spell. Chromatic Orb I still think is better because of the overall utility, but Ice Knife is solid, and like there's nothing wrong with Ice Knife. Long Strider, I absolutely love Long Strider, especially with the way that it works in this game. D&D 5e it's not as good, but in this game, because it lasts a long rest and you can cast it on your entire party, and it doesn't cost a spell slot, Long Strider is basically just a free 10 feet movement for your party for the entire game. So I absolutely recommend taking Long Strider as like a must-have, because like there's no reason not to take free 10 feet extra movement for the entire game. Mage Armor is going to be a solid option for your wizards. I would almost put it's like an A+, like I would almost put it in must-have, but a lot of the times, like if you're going straight wizards, a little bit different, but a lot of the times, like a lot of people want to multi-class and like get like armor proficiencies and stuff, or if you get the Yankee, then you have some armor proficiencies, so it loses a little bit of value there. And one of the common things to multi-class wizard with is like a fighter, and the main reason why is because of action surge, right? But also because you get constitution saving throw proficiencies, and you get access to like light armor and medium armor. If you start off as a fighter, then you get heavy armor as well, and then martial weapons if you want to do something with that. So it's like really solid, but there's so many different ways to kind of get around the need for mage armor that it's not like a must-have, absolutely necessary. Magic Missile, so the thing about Magic Missile is really solid and is like a good spell to always have, especially when you need to like just finish off key targets and you don't want to worry about missing. But because of the specific equipment and stuff in this game, Magic Missile ends up being insane. Like there's so many Magic Missile builds out there where where it can be like the most insane level 1 spell in the entire game and just output like you're like a Gatling gun for magic missile. So because of like those builds specifically, and just because of the fact that like it's a solid spell on its own, I still think that it goes in the S tier. Not necessarily a must-have for any build, but I always like picking it up to have in my back pocket, because sometimes like you have enemies pretty low and you just want to finish them off, or you don't want to worry about missing. And especially in like honor mode, for example, you really don't want to miss. So you can like upcast a magic missile and just like guarantee finish off an enemy before, you know, you get killed. Protection from good and evil. Protection from good and evil actually early game does have a lot of benefits. There is a lot of enemies that you will fight that this does come into play with, but at the end of the day, like one of the things holding it back is, of course, it is a concentration spell, and you're going to get better concentration spells that you want to concentrate on more. And then on top of that, it's like it's still kind of niche in its uses, so it's like a low B for me, honestly, but it's not like the worst. Ray of Sickness. Yeah, Ray of Sickness. It's like okay. It's like a high C tier. Like it's not bad. Like it does some damage and it can poison, so if you're going for like the poison build, then like it's fine, but you just have better options, especially like level 1 options for damage, so it's not really a pickup. Shield is S tier. Absolutely, shield is one of the best level 1 spells in the game in my opinion, because having free 5 AC as a reaction on any character is good. Like it doesn't matter what character you are, if every character could get shield, if every class could get shield, they would take shield, because free plus 5 AC as a reaction is really, really good, right? Like this is huge, and it doesn't last for one attack. Like it lasts until your next turn. So shield is like the bread and butter for like spell blade and gish type builds. And shield, honestly, like especially to protect your like squishy casters and stuff, insane. Shield's always just insane. Sleep is really good in the early game and then falls off as the game goes by, so I'm gonna put it in B tier, because like early game it can be insane. Enemies are pretty smart though, and like they will try to wake up their allies, so just pay attention to that. But sleep can be really strong in the early game, but it does quickly fall off. Cautious Hideous Laughter. The thing about it is for like a wizard specifically, it's not as good as I would say like for a bard, right? Like this is kind of like a signature spell for a bard. But for a wizard specifically, against concentration, you have other spells that you do want to concentrate on, so it loses some of its value there. But ultimately, it's still like pretty solid, you know what I mean? And until you get like better concentration spells, you can use this and just kind of like take an enemy out of the fight. Thunderwave, I really like Thunderwave for Baldur's Gate 3 for wizards and for like a lot of classes, honestly, because not only can you just knock enemies off like cliffs and stuff and just like get like an insta kill with it, but for a squishy wizard, if you get ran up on by a bunch of enemies, this is a nice like fail safe button just to like knock them back and like get away, you know? Especially if you have like Expeditious Retreat, like you can knock them back and then dash and just like get the heck out of there. So it has a lot of utility and it is really nice. Witchbolt's interesting to me. I've used it more than I thought I would, but it's like concentration, and it's nice because it's a 1d12 that you can like recast as long as you're concentrating on it to like that target. But I still feel like you want to be concentrating on something else most of the time, and it's like the other level 1 damaging spells just end up being kind of like better than it. So I mean, like it's not terrible. You can output a lot of damage, and it is nice to keep reapplying that damage without using a spell slot, but there's still better ones. Like the ones up here for level 1 damaging spells are just better. Color Spray, I've never really used this spell in Baldur's Gate 3. I don't think it's the worst spell in the game, but it's like And then Arcane Lock. Arcane Lock is like a C tier. It has its uses, especially for like creative players, but you just don't come up against those situations that much. And then similar with Blindness. Blindness can be really good in like the right situation, but it's one of those things where it's hard to justify taking like an entire action for just casting blindness on like one target, even if it's like a boss, and God forbid like they succeed their saving throw, because then it's just like you just pretty much wasted your turn, right, and a spell slot. So it's not horrible, but there's much better things that you could be doing with your turn. And now that I'm realizing it, is Knock not on this list? This should have every wizard spell up to 3rd level. Pretend Knock is on here, and then I would put Knock as a B tier and high A tier. Like it's really good if you don't have a rogue in your party, but you don't really need it if you have a rogue in your party. So that's where Knock goes, somewhere over here. Blur is concentration, but it's not like, the thing about it is because of the fact that like it's concentration, and it does give you like a great benefit giving enemies disadvantage on attacks against you, but again, like at this point you are going to start getting spells that you want to concentrate on more, and I'd rather use mirror image in that case. So blur isn't terrible by any means, but, and we'll just talk about mirror image really quick. Mirror image is just better because you can activate it. It does cost an action while, so it's still like you still have to kind of plan around it because you don't want to use a whole turn just casting mirror image. But like before you go into combat, you can cast mirror image and then get like a huge boost to your AC, and you combine that with shield, and like you'll be untouchable for a couple of rounds, right? So I really like mirror image, especially when you can combine it with shield, because it's going to be like, there's going to be times where you're not going to be able to get hit straight up unless they crit you, which is really nice. Cloud of Daggers is pretty decent. Like it does decent amount of damage, and it is a concentration spell, and it does have utility, especially for even trying to just like force enemies to move out of like advantageous positions because they don't want to sit in there and take the Cloud of Daggers. So I would say it's like a solid B tier. It's not too much better than that, and it does quickly get overclassed by like higher level concentration spells, but it's not bad. Crown of Madness is another one where I haven't used too much in Baldur's Gate 3, and I think that it's not like a horrible spell, but I just feel like oftentimes there's better spells to be casting. Darkness for a wizard specifically is like almost D tier. It's like C minus, right? Unless you're specifically getting the ring that allows you to see, the ring that makes it so you can't be blinded, and then you have a benefit with darkness. But the thing is like you're usually combining that with like a warlock and like devil sight and stuff, and like going with that path. So if you want to like kind of mimic that warlock combo, you could wear that ring and then use darkness, and then it goes up on the tier list. But for a general use, besides that one specific like combo and build, darkness is not good, because like there's not really an advantage to you casting darkness when you and your allies can't see in that darkness, right? And it's a concentration spell. You don't want to concentrate on that. Dark vision is basically useless because almost every race has dark vision, and there's plenty of ways to just like supplement not having dark vision in this game. So it's like you just unless you're like a human and you have a party of like 4 humans and no warlocks or nothing like that, like you're not really gonna ever use dark vision. Like you don't need to cast dark vision. You could just go with a race that has dark vision. Tech thoughts is pretty solid. I like to tech thoughts, especially for like gameplay and roleplay reasons, because it just like it allows you to enjoy more of the narrative of the story, specifically in Baldur's Gate 3. So I think it's a really fun spell, and I do really enjoy it for that reason. Enlarge Reduce is actually a really solid spell, and one I don't see a lot of people talk about, but the thing about it is it has a lot of utility. You can cast this on like your tanky frontline, like fighter, paladin, whatever, and give them like extra damage and like some other benefits. Or you can make you or someone else tiny, and then you can navigate like the certain spaces that you can only do like when you're a small creature, or I believe that you can also like try to do this on an enemy, and then that's like really funny. But it has a lot of like different uses that are all solid. Like none of them are like bad. Like it's nice. Like it is concentration, so I will say that, but other than it being concentration, it's not too bad. Flaming Spear is actually really good until you get better concentration spells, and it surprised me when I started using Flaming Spear, because the thing is this thing just tanks aggro. Like when I did like the spider fight where it's like the spider that keeps like awakening all her hatchlings and stuff, and this thing just drew the aggro of like all the hatchlings and the main spider, and it was sitting there and it was burning everything, like it's AoE and then it's ram attack, and like it was insane. Like this took off so much of the heat from us that we basically got to walk through that fight super easy. So it really took me by surprise. I really like Flaming Spear actually. Gust of Wind is, I think it has like a bigger range than Thunderwave, but doesn't do damage and knocks them like off balance. Like it has some uses, but I would still rather be casting like a Thunderwave or something, or just like a different spell. Hold Person is insane. Like in the right situations, Hold Person is going to be like your best spell, especially if there's like a humanoid boss and you land this, then that boss is basically done. Like you can land this and literally like have your wizard like Misty Step away, so that way that like they don't get attacked and don't have their concentration broken, and there's nothing that boss can do. they're just screwed. Visibility is really solid, and I think for most characters, invisibility is going to be like a great pickup for you because of like all the utility that it has outside of combat. Inside of combat, it's not like too great, obviously, because after you attack, you break your invisibility, but it's a way to get advantage. So it does have that. If you want to like start a combat while invisible and then make like an attack, then you'll get like that advantage and stuff. But again, it just has like a lot of utility for like infiltration and stuff. And I know your wizard isn't always going to be like the one you want to send infiltrating on, but you can cast this on someone else, so not too bad. Magic weapon is your, like, if you want to concentrate on this spell for someone else in your party, you could, but it's like why would you, like, you just have better options. There's not really a reason to, and it doesn't even give you that much of a benefit, and it's not hard to get like a +1 weapon in the game. It's like almost D tier for me, because it's like, the thing is it's not completely useless, but it's almost like, and it's a concentration spell, so it's like, why would you ever use this? This is honestly like maybe D+, because it has more utility, like it has better uses than the other ones, but it's still like, why would you ever use this type of spell? Okay, Melf's Acid Arrow. Melf's Acid Arrow is just kind of like decent. It's good for like if you wanted to, there's some, okay, I will say that there are some use cases, especially with like having acid, because I think acid, like when you're covered in acid, it reduces like your armor or something like that. So there are some use cases for it when you look at it like that, for having like an AoE way to like do some damage and then like reduce that armor and have some like utility and stuff. But again, like we're now talking about level 2 spells, and there's stronger damaging options for level 2 spells than Melf's Acid Arrow gives you, or maybe it's just Acid Arrow. I don't think it's Melf's in this game. But anyway, moving on, Misty Step, easy S tier. This is like, out of all these spells in the entire like level 3 tier list and below, this is like the most go-to spell that you can get. Like you should, if it's not shield, like you should always take Misty Step, right? Like there's no reason not to have Misty Step on a character. It's a free teleport. Like you just take it. Phantasmal Killer. This one is interesting because I can see, like, it's a concentration spell. I can see where you would want to use this and where you could get some benefits from it, especially because of the fact that like it changes like the damage type to the last one you use. So if you're going like a specific damage, like the Frost build, for example, then you can get like extra damage and get like those extra synergies and benefits from that. So it's not horrible, but it is a concentration spell, and you're starting to get better spells that you want to concentrate on. So a couple things. Rave Enfeeblement, there is some use cases for this, but 99% of the time, like, you're not going to use this spell. So I just think it's pretty bad. Scorching Ray. Scorching Ray is fantastic. I think that this is great. This is going to be, for most wizards, their go-to level 2 damaging option. Scorching Ray is just really good. It's like fire Eldritch Blast, right? Like, when you get high enough level, you can shoot 3 Eldritch Blast. I can't speak today. 3 Eldritch Blast rays. There we go. It's like a tongue twister, I swear. That's basically Scorching Ray, right? Like you basically just do that with Scorching Ray. You can pick up to 3 targets, and at higher levels you can get more rays, shoot more damage, ton of damage. Really nice. Can't say enough good things about it. See Invisibility. See Invisibility has its use cases, but it is not like the most absolutely necessary thing in the world. And again, like, those cases are really niche. There's like a couple times where you can use this and it would be nice, but you can also get the benefit of See Invisibility permanently on you through Volo, by having him try to like take like the parasite out of your head. So that makes it like even farther down the list, honestly. Shatter, I'm debating whether or not I want to put like high A tier or like S tier, because Shatter is like the other like go-to damaging spell for level 2 spells that like I tend to lean towards. I think both of them are really good, and both of them have like their use cases. Shatter obviously can hit more enemies total, like if there's a bunch grouped up, but Scorching Ray can hit them when they're far apart. So you could just take both, and then you have, like, when enemies are grouped up, you use Shatter. When enemies are spread apart and they're like one here, one there, you can do. Pretty nice. So yeah, I mean, Shatter's like the other just like go-to damaging spell for level 2. So I would say just like put it in S tier. Web has some uses, and it's like, it's not horrible. It is concentration. It does have its uses, but I still feel like there's just better spells on the list, and besides like the niche uses that it has, like, there's just not a lot of times that you're going to be using the spell. And that's one of my biggest things that I rank it on, is like, how often are you going to get use out of like these spells, right? Like things like Misty Step, things like Shield, things like shatter, hold person, whatever, like these are spells that you can get use in almost every single fight or like situation that comes up, like where you could use these spells, right? Like these are spells that you're never sitting there waiting for the perfect moment. You can just use them and they'll be good, and that's why they're an S tier. So for that reason, something like Web, where it has so many just like niche uses, is going to be in C tier. Bestow Curse, the thing about Bestow Curse is it's not bad in terms of like the effects. Like there's some really good effects, but I believe that it's a touch, right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe you have to like touch or be really close to the person. As a wizard, you usually don't want to do that. And this is level 3, and we have specific spells that we want to concentrate on that I think are just overall better, right? So for that reason, it's like C tier. It's like a high C, it's like C plus, because it does have some good effects, but when to practical game application, it's hard to pull off and make use of, and you don't really want to put your squishy wizard in that close to get this off, right? Even if you can Misty Step away afterwards. Blink. Blink is really interesting because like it's very cheese. Like this is like a very cheese spell, so I'm gonna put it in like C tier because it can win you fights just based off the fact that like your wizard is going to be untouchable, but it's like random, right? Like it's all RNG based, so it's like, I don't know, this is like more like a troll spell in my opinion, but you can cheese like fights with this spell, so it's pretty funny. Counterspell is a must-take spell in my opinion because it is always nice to have counterspell in your back pocket for those times where you're not going to be shielding because the focus fire is not on you, but an enemy is about to cast like a fireball on your team and absolutely decimate them. You're going to want to counterspell that, and especially because in like harder game modes like honor mode, for example, where if someone dies, they're dead, and someone's going to throw, like I said, a fireball or another damaging spell that could wipe your entire party, counterspell can come in clutch and absolutely save you. So counterspell is just one of those things where it's like if you have access to it, you should be taking counterspell because of the fact that like you always want to have it in your back pocket, and you never want to be caught in a situation where you don't have counterspell because it really could just like spell the end for you. Fear, I don't know, man. Fear is one of those things where I've never taken this spell and I never really use it. Like I don't have a reason to use fear ever. I'm not saying that there isn't reasons to use fear, but like we're level 3, you know what I mean? Like I could cast fear or I could cast fireball, you know? And it's like when you put it like that, it's like Vain Death is another one of those where it's like it has its uses and maybe it's better in honor mode, but still like it's like niche, right? Like it's like a very niche situation, so it's like and again, maybe it could save you or some specific party members in honor mode, but at the end of the day, like I don't think that it has enough use cases to where it deserves higher on the tier list. Fireball, come on, man. Yeah, everyone knows Fireball is S tier. This is your go-to damaging spell for level 3 as a wizard. It's a meme at this point. You take Fireball when you can, like you just Fireball. Flight, I like Flight a lot. I take it in B tier, and then it drops down as you get, like, if you take the enhanced illithid powers, because you just gain Flight, and then it's completely useless at, like, D tier, right? Besides, like, granting it to a party member. But Flight is pretty good. It gives you a lot of options, and it's always nice to have the ability to fly in your back pocket and give, like, specific, especially for, like, exploration. Like, that's the main thing, is for exploration, so because of that reason, I think it's a really solid exploration spell. But again, it does lose like all of its value once you get like the advanced illithid powers later on. So it's probably like C plus, like B minus, like somewhere in there, you know. But just flying is awesome. Like who doesn't want to do that? So Gasas Form actually has like a lot of use cases, and it can be similar to Flight in some ways with like the movement and stuff. But there are enough use cases for Gasas Form to where I could see arguing that it deserves like a B tier, maybe even like B minus tier, because like there is just like some good options that you can pull off, and some good maneuvers if you're creative that you can pull off with Gasas Form, and it can save your butt too. Glyph of Warding for a wizard specifically is like, kind of want to put it in A tier, honestly. And the reason why is like, if you're an abjuration wizard, this is going to be an abjuration spell, which is really nice because it's like one of the few abjuration spells that you get as like a damaging spell for your abjuration wizards. But on top of that, it's like chromatic orb, but AoE, right? It's like basically an AoE chromatic orb. If chromatic orb's good, then Glyph of Warding is probably good too, right? So because of like the options that Glyph of Warding has, and the fact that you can do things like, if you're one of the races that can't be put to sleep, you can literally walk into a group of enemies, cast a Glyph of Warding sleep, knock them all out, and you'll be perfectly fine, right? And there's like so many other options, like knocking all the enemies off like a bridge, or if you again like do like the create water and then this with like the lightning or something like that. Like there's a lot of utility, because again, everything I said about chromatic orb can apply to glint of warding, but glint of warding is like a bigger AoE, so it's pretty solid. It's like usually like, again, if you just want raw damage, you're going to be casting Fireball, but glint of warding is still really good. Haste, I might be a little biased here. Haste is like my favorite spell in the game. I'm gonna keep it real with you. Haste is just like, it's so good, right? Like the AC, the movement speed, the extra action. That's the main reason why I like Haste so much, honestly, and why it's so good is because the extra action, like everything, like Haste just, it's like going Super Saiyan, right? I've made that comparison before, but Haste is like going Super Saiyan. And if you're a wizard that took 2 levels of fire for action surge and you're hasted, like you can drop 4 fireballs in a turn. Do I have to say more after that? Do I have to convince you otherwise, other than you can legitimately drop 4 fireballs in a turn? And there's not a lot of encounters that are going to survive you just going, hey, here's a quadruple fireball, good luck, and then blowing up the battlefield. I think I've made a good enough case for haste. I don't think I need to convince you anymore. Hypnotic pattern on wizard specifically. On bard, it's like amazing, right? Like it's almost S tier on bard, or could be even S tier on bard. On wizard, it's not that it's like bad by any means, and for specific I can't remember the name of the specific subclass, but it can be really good, so I'll put it like in B tier because it is solid and it does have a lot of utility, and it is just like a good spell in general. But it is concentration, and now that we're level 3, why not just concentrate on haste? Anyway, lightning bolt is basically fireball, but when you want to do it in a line instead of a circle. So if fireball is S tier, lightning bolt would also be S tier, right? And they both have their benefits with like having like grease on the ground or like water. So yeah, I mean, this is like your shatter and scorching ray combo. Like these are your 2 main damaging spells that you take at level 3, and then of course like glint of warding also. But if you're just going like full blaster, then it's like you just pick these 2, and then if you don't want to destroy your allies, lightning bolt's usually easier to avoid hitting your allies and hitting your enemies. So yeah, there's that. Protection from energy. I don't think I've ever really cast this spell, and it's not that it's like bad, but again, it's like a lot of problems with concentration spells is that the niche concentration spells just get overclassed by the spells that are like never bad to concentrate on, right? Like it's never bad to concentrate on haste. Like yeah, I know if it ends early, like you basically skip a turn and stuff, but the thing is like there's certain spells in this game that every fight you would not mind concentrating on, and that give you a better benefit than concentrating on like specific like niche spells, right? Like I would always rather be hastened and have the opportunity to drop 4 fireballs in a turn with like action surge, for example, right? Or even just 2 if I'm not like multi-classing, then concentrating on protection of energy and getting like a little bit of benefit. So it's like, remove curse. I mean, like it's not that it's completely useless. It's like a D+, C-. It's just that like the niche cases are so niche that you're probably never going to use this spell. I just don't see it. Ice Storm is solid, but it doesn't do damage, but it has a lot. What it doesn't do in damage, it makes up utility. Or is this, this is Sleet Storm. Ice Storm is the level 4 spell that does do damage and is really strong. Sleet Storm still has its uses, especially if you drop a Sleet Storm and then a lightning bolt. If you're hastened, for example, you can do that, right? Like you can drop Sleet Storm and then lightning bolt in the same turn and get a bunch of damage. So it still has its uses and it's still pretty solid, but the fact that it doesn't do damage does kind of suck. And I believe it is concentration as well. Slow is kind of like hypnotic pattern, and like they're very similar, where like you can get your uses from it, and like it is really solid in terms of CC. But most of the time in this game, you'd rather just be doing damage. Dinking Cloud, I don't think I've ever really cast this spell, and there's just better spells to cast. Honestly, it's not really much to say. Vampiric Touch is like C tier, as much as I hate it because I love Vampiric Touch. But unless you're playing like my Necrotic Reaper build card up there, and making use of like specifically trying to build around Vampiric Touch, it's just not really good because you don't want to put your squishy wizard up into melee range to cast this spell. So that's like the main thing for it, is like it's just not worth it. even if like you went like fighter and stuff like that, like you really have to kind of build around Vampiric Touch for a wizard specifically to really make it worth it. And it is a concentration spell, so that is something else to know. But that is going to be my tier list for the wizard spells of level 3 and below. I will tackle the higher level spells later, but there's a ton of spells, especially for the wizards class. They have like the largest spell list in the game, so I don't want to make these videos like 2 hours long going over every single spell in one tier list. So this is going to be my tier list for the level 3 spells and below. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you do enjoy this type of content, then leave me a like so that way I know to make more tier lists, and subscribe if you want to see more content on D&D 5e, Baldur's Gate 3, and other action RPGs. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I will see you in the next one.